Hey, DJ, guess what?
What?
We got a sponsor.
A sponsor?
Yeah.
Like a cool sponsor?
Yeah, a cool sponsor. I mean, we've been sponsoring them, or we've been sponsoring. They've been sponsoring us, for like several months now. I would think you would know.
It's Tennessee Craft Beer Magazine.
You know it. I know it. Yeah. So they Tennessee Craft Beer Magazine is pretty awesome. You can find them online at tncraftbeermag.com. And there you'll find digital copies of their magazine, along with a statewide brewery map, events calendar, and you can even subscribe to their print edition right there online.
It's like the newspaper for beer.
It is the newspaper for beer. That's why it's the Tennessee Craft Beer Magazine. So yeah, find them online at tncraftbeermag.com.
I'm halfway down in the bottom of a bottle and I ain't gonna change my ways. But I ain't half bad when I do what I ought. It don't happen much these days.
All right, hey guys, it's Chris Hill.
This is DJ Loop.
And we are here today with Scotty Hunter from Urban Artifact. Scotty, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, we're excited to see more Cincinnati beer coming our way. So,
yeah, it's exciting. It was funny when we started distributing down here a year ago now. It was us. I think Rivertown was in the market, and then a few months ago, Madtree started distributing here. So a lot of people were saying, "Oh, yeah, we know Cincinnati. That's Urban Artifact, right?"
yeah,
Madtree doesn't usually get that. We don't normally lead the market for them.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
I mean, Madtree just makes some good beers. It's a good representation of Cincinnati. I've liked everything that they've had in the market, and it's kind of cool that you guys are here and just to kind of broad the spectrum of beers here in Knoxville.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a market that is really booming now, especially with the change in legislation, beginning of last year. Mm-hmm. Was just so restrictive on craft beer in Tennessee. So that's done and over, and I think everybody's benefiting.
Yeah, it's definitely been freeing, and I mean, DJ and I have definitely seen a lot of changes as a result of, or a lot of good improvements even in the local beer just as a result of those law changes. So that's cool. So tell us a little bit, Scotty, about your history with Urban Artifact, and then also I'd love to learn a little bit more about Urban Artifact other than they make really good beer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm one of the owners, founders, partners. Three of us, myself, Scott Hand, so that's why I go by Scotty. He's the elder of the group. I'm the younger one by a couple years. And then Brett Coleman Baker, he handles all brewing operations. I handle sales. That's why you guys are talking to me. I'm down here for Knox Craft Beer Week and the Brew Fest on Saturday. So I've been there since the beginning. We've owned our property for coming up on 4 years now. Been in operation for just about 3. We bought an old church, rectory, and gymnasium. So we've got this just gorgeous building, gorgeous property, little campus. It's not Sierra Nevada like me and DJ were talking about earlier, but it's our very miniature version of that. So we got our tap room in the lower level of the church. We got our brewing operations in the gymnasium to the north of that. We hold wedding receptions upstairs in the sanctuary space.
Wow.
We've got tenants in the rectory building that's on the property, pizza kitchen that's going in there. So we got a few things happening.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and I guess I should say we make exclusively sour beer.
Yeah.
So that's all we do. That's all we've done since the start, and it's really helped us carve out a name for ourselves in the market.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who has slowly gotten into sour beer, I can tell you I've really enjoyed, exploring all the beers that are out there. But really enjoyed seeing what new things come to market, and it's nice to know that people like you exist that have that space just for the sour beers, because a lot of people do them as one-offs and they don't take the time to really craft them the way that they should. And so you get, in my opinion, a lot of times a subpar product when that happens, or people that put out a sour because it's a happy accident.
Yeah, those are usually not the best ones, and it's a different process, and you've got to understand different techniques. So having some of that expertise really helps. Just like the best people to make IPAs or hazy IPAs, there's folks that's essentially all they do. Maybe they do a little bit here and there, but that's what they do, and they get good at it.
Yeah, that's cool.
When you thought the business plan out for Urban Artifact and stuff, like how did you go about thinking how we're going to make a sour approachable? Like what I'm drinking right now, the Pale. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a tart beer, but it's super approachable.
Yeah.
And you guys do it very well. How did you guys think? Okay, we're going to make a beer that's unique and different, but approachable.
Things really kind of changed a little bit. It's like every business plan, right? You start off with, okay, this is what we're going to do. Here's the basic concept. Here's what we think is going to work within that. But ultimately, we have some things that stayed with us from opening till now. So Finn, the tart pale that we're talking about, that was one of our, intended flagships. It's remained that way, but it's changed. We actually, based on reception from the market, we lowered the acidity, increased the pH on that, so it is a lot more approachable than it used to be. It was previously more in line with our Gozas as far as acidity or tartness, and it was just really okay. We know what we want to do, and then let's listen to what the market tells us. So a good example of that is our Gozas. So we started off with just a traditional plain Goza, and we thought, based on what Westbrook was doing with their Goza, that craft beer was ready for that, especially in that area where nobody was doing it. People are going to love this because we love it. And people didn't respond. I mean, that beer did not move well at all. So that's when we started adding fruit to our Gozas and we had always intended to do that as a seasonal thing. And those did so well that we just scrapped the original Goza entirely and said, it's not what people want. It can work in very small pockets, but for what we were trying to do and base our brewery on, it just wasn't something that made sense for us.
And I think that's a very good point, because I think listening to your customer is always really important with any business that you're in. And it's cool that that you all are doing that. You're keeping your ear to the ground and paying attention. I know some people will be like, well, we just do Goza that way. If people don't like it, we're just going to keep it.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you should take all feedback and try to implement everything that people say.
Sure.
Because I'm like the Henry Ford quote that, if I would have listened to people, I would have just built a faster horse.
Yeah.
It's something like that. It's like, yeah, you listen to, feedback and then produce something that maybe they don't expect, but will fill that need.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
How did you decide to start doing Urban Artifact? As one of the founders, when did the idea come about, and how did all that start?
Yeah, I would say it really from the very beginning, where it first cropped up, would be Brett and myself went to school at Ohio University in Athens, which is where Jackie O's is. Mm-hmm. Most people, if you're really into craft beer, know Jackie O's, at least for the barrel-aged stout, stuff like that. And we started homebrewing. We started a homebrew club there at OU. It's actually still going on to this day. It's still an active club tied into the university, and found our love for craft beer. So from that, we talked after college, after graduated, hey, what do we want to do? We talked about doing a distillery. We talked about maybe just doing lagers. We talked about a few different things. And then Brett developed the modified sour mash that we use to this day to produce the beers that we do. And once we had that, we know, okay, we can do this brewery sour only, because otherwise we were looking at, doing barrel-aged sours like the brewery or Rare Barrel, and we didn't really necessarily have a grasp on how we can make that work financially, as far as filling a bunch, making or buying a bunch of beer, filling barrels, aging them, and basically having to have working capital for at least a year, if not more.
Yeah.
Before we were actually bringing any income in. So that was our way to fund barrel program and grow the brewery.
Cool. So where's the barrel program at today then?
It's about 100 oak barrels, which
Nice.
It's not huge, but it's solid. We're just in the process of expanding our capacity from stainless. So we just added 2 120 barrel fermenters, effectively doubling our capacity. They are online as of today, I believe. Yeah, as long as things still went well. So we'll be pushing beer into them tomorrow, and then from there we'll just be able to keep adding oak. We've got stuff lined up. We have kind of 3 main larger scale releases that we plan out. One for our anniversary, one for a beer and music festival we have called Bewilderfest in August, and then we do one with kind of Thanksgiving food themed called an Epicurean is the line, and that's in November. And so we just kind of plan everything based off that and roll that way.
That's really cool. Yeah. So when you do barrel aging, you say you've got oak barrels. Who are you getting those through? Or is it a specific like distillery that you'd like to purchase through, or how are you doing that?
Well, I mean, for us, what's really important is having neutral oak. We're not necessarily looking to get flavors such as like a bourbon barrel characteristic, because we are so close to Kentucky. Oftentimes we'll just drive down to Louisville. There's a couple different.
Do they make bourbon in Kentucky?
They make a little bit of bourbon.
Just a little bit.
I didn't know. I didn't.
Not much around Louisville, though.
I didn't know. I didn't know if there was bourbon in Kentucky or not.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, so we can drive down there. It's an hour and a half. We pick up a bunch of oak barrels. We buy barrels from other breweries after they burn barrel aged stuff. We'll buy wine barrels. We're not super picky necessarily because again we're not trying to get that spirit flavor from them.
So that's neat. So you're doing a barrel age program then, and you're doing all these sours. Where do you see the brewery going? It sounds like you're launching some new stuff today, but I mean, what's beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, for us right now, it's filling out stainless capacity while growing that barrel program at a rate that we can kind of manage. So all of our, I guess I should take a step back and say that all of our barrel-aged sour beers are cultures that we have caught ourselves, okay? We didn't go to White Labs or Omega and buy, standard lacto, Brett, what have you, which means it took a lot longer, okay, for us to catch these cultures, develop them, find the ones that are right, and then blend and just build that out. So it took a solid 2 years to go from, opening the brewery and getting the first oaks and catching those microbes to a product that we were happy with.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not a route most breweries take. So normally you'll see breweries, if they start like a sour program, in like a year they'll have something turn because they'll use commercial yeast. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I think you get some similar flavor characteristics across brands because of
Sure.
that. So yeah.
That's fascinating. So you kind of have, like, in an urban environment, caught these artifacts of yeast.
Right.
I think I'm starting to see. Is that where the name comes from?
Yeah, I always tell people that the name has come to fit us better than we probably realized at the time.
Huh.
Because, we bought a church within the city limits of Cincinnati and we put a brewery in it. So we took, an artifact. It's a 146-year-old church and an urban area. So it totally fits.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That when I was first kind of doing the research for the podcast, and I've drank a lot of your beer here, but I didn't know that you were in a church.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of my first questions I was going to ask you. I mean, how did the community take that, or was there any pushback? Was there any kind of a brewery in a church, in an old church? I mean, there's some, and especially here in the South, there's some stigmas around that. Have you dealt with that, or have you dealt with anything like that, or?
Not really. So in Cincinnati, there's a lot of churches that, with parishes just kind of condensing, there's a lot of churches just sitting empty, especially. So we actually had anybody that was associated with the church come back and thanking us for taking over and basically keeping that property viable and standing and that history there. I mean, yes, it looks different inside to this day, but it's a registered historic building, so the outside remains essentially unchanged. We'll just do updates that are within that code. But they're happy to see that piece of their history remain and not get torn down or just become dilapidated to where it would be condemned. So it's been really cool. We've had people bring pictures of when they got baptized, when they got married. I mean, it's just crazy, crazy stories of seeing what that property looked like over the years. It's really fun.
I mean, I think just for space wise and it would be like historic churches and stuff would be good places for like the Tabernacle in Atlanta, which is it still open?
I think so.
Concert venue.
Oh yeah, the Tabernacle.
Yeah, the Tabernacle. So there's like some of these but sometimes you get pushback from communities and stuff where, especially in the South.
Don't we have a brewery coming into like a Southern Baptist church somewhere around here?
The old Severe Heights building, yeah.
And is there pushback against that?
I've heard some rumblings of pushback from community members, but nothing in the beer industry though.
Well, my dad, who's Baptist, would say he would always say, "Don't drink, smoke, or chew, or go with those who do." so I can imagine they're probably not too happy with it.
You failed on
I failed.
2 accounts?
At least 2, yeah.
At least 2, yeah.
Yeah, I've not chewed anything. But anyways.
It's real cool that people respect what you're doing with it. And I think when it comes to craft beer, I think people understand what craft beer is, and you're doing an art product. It's a product that's based in like art and expression and quality. Yeah. You're not trying to do something that's just to turn the cheapest thing to turn a buck.
Correct. And I think it goes back to our just community outreach, and I think that's most craft breweries. We open our doors because we have such a big space to any and every community organization group that we can. If somebody needs some space to hold a meeting or an event, as long as we can accommodate, we will, and that's helped out, I think, immensely, having that open door policy.
Yeah, I've been making the argument for probably over a year now that's one of the big things that local craft breweries are doing is they're helping bring back and unify communities that would otherwise not exist. Mm-hmm. So that's cool to see that you all are definitely a part of that.
Yeah, most definitely reuniting the pub culture in America. I love pub culture, and I've probably talked about it on the podcast before, but I think that's the new pub culture is craft brewery.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, you go away from like the 72 TVs and just hanging out with people, talking, have a conversation, and getting back to know people. I think is what you're getting to.
Yeah, that building of community and everything is really important.
I'm gonna drink all the pictures. You guys don't.
Hey now. I'm gonna.
You guys don't hurry up. Jeez.
That's the pail, right?
That
both sides.
Both sides.
On both sides.
I like that split picture.
Yeah, it's the black and tan picture.
I'm gonna have to look for that now. So we do a lot of heavily fruited beers, and our bartenders love mixing beers, and they'll get customers mixing beers, which means like we'll get pictures on like Facebook groups of people doing different mixes. I had a buddy of mine lived up in Cleveland. He collected 1 can of every release since we started packaging, all small format, none of the barrel aged stuff. But he saved one of those. He bought like a 5-gallon like big dispenser, like a I don't know,
like a fuser.
No, just like a big cooler, just like you would put. Normally, people would put like lemonade or something or ice water, and just put like a little spigot on the end. Anyway, he poured all those cans into that, made a giant cuvee, and people just drank that on the anniversary party.
That's
this year.
awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of. I tried it and I was like, so we do I don't know if you guys are aware, we do a pickle beer.
I
guessed by your shirt, but I've tasted it before.
I think didn't we have it when we were in Murfreesboro? Actually,
they have.
There was a pickle beer, and I don't think it was one they brewed, or maybe it was no. Anyways, whatever. It was at the Green Dragon in Murfreesboro.
Oh, right on. Yeah. So it's a flavor though that normally will take over anything. Like I tried doing like a 12 tap cuvee when it was on tap. last year when it was out and dominated. But in that 25, 26 can cuvee, it didn't dominate. It was pretty good. I was like, did not expect that to be as tasty.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That is delicious.
The fact that you mentioned the Bickle beer.
Yeah.
Let's actually get into the beers.
Sure.
We've talked about the history and we kind of got up to this point. Let's talk so what's the flagships? What's some of the beers we should go for? And if you're in Cincinnati, maybe we can't get in Knoxville. What can we expect in Knoxville? I just gave you 7 questions in one.
It's a loaded questions, but gives me plenty to go off of. So we're drinking one of the flagships, Finn Tart Pale Ale. That's a year-round offering for us, and with this, our entry into package and just our growth as a brand, we've really kind of still felt things out and tweaked our lineup. We're not afraid to take something and just not literally can it, but just figuratively get rid of it, can it. It's got a very different meaning, right? Especially since we can our beers.
Take something terrible and we just can it.
Yeah, and just can it, right?
And sell it everywhere.
But if things don't, hit the mark exactly, we need to move on. We move on from it and replace it. So anyway, Finn, the Tart Pale Ale, we do rotating fruited gozas. So right now it's Key Punch, Key Lime season. The next one coming out will be Chariot, which is a tart cherry goza. Postcard is a sour IPA. It's a fairly new entry to our lineup. We've only sent some drafts to Knoxville so far, but as those tanks get up and running, that's when we'll start to see package of that come down as well. And then we do what we named Midwest Fruit Tarts. So we've got one on tap today, Gyroscope. It's a raspberry version, but what these are is they are very heavily fruited sour beers. So these are typically at least 2.5 to 3 pounds per gallon of fruit to the beer, which ends up being 3,000 pounds for a 30-barrel batch. So you get that really rich, nice, decadent flavor, and that acidity balances out. And there's nothing like real fruit in a beer when you compare it to flavorings or extracts.
So just want to point out there too, then you're also saying you use real fruit, you're not using an extract or something like that within your beers. Correct,
yeah. So, that has led to its challenges, and it's definitely not cheap.
Yeah.
But we've always had the stance that beer should be accessible, and kind of the premise of us starting a brewery and doing the sour beers that we do is giving sour beer accessibility to people. Hey, you don't have to spend $20 on that bomber of Cascade to see if you like sour beer or not. Try a 6-pack of this. If you like that in your beer, then maybe you go in, you buy a nice bottle of something, and kind of just grow and develop palates that way.
Yeah, because that could be hard with a lot of other, especially boutique sour breweries, is you buy them in the bomber. You have to commit to that larger packaging before you have the chance to really tell. So, yeah.
And I think you've kind of almost had the same kind of premises as really people that really do hoppy beers well. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of times you can get that entry level hoppy beer. You can get that beer that's what 45, 50 IBUs or something. That's something that's gonna you're gonna taste the hops. But then over here we sell the dankest 100 and something IBUs beers. So for you in the sour, you can get the both range.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can get something like this where this is would be the perfect Brewfest this Saturday.
I just want to keep drinking this all day.
Yeah, it's
I
great.
mean, just hang out at your Brewfest tent and just chug this.
So I mean, you can drink that all day, and it's it's got the tart flavor, but it's refreshing. Mm-hmm. But also, if you want to you probably get something really a one-off high-end bottle that's probably gonna make you pucker, and it's gonna be experience drinking it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one of the things that we do with even our everyday portfolio is we range the acidity level across the portfolio. So Finn is going to be the lightest in acidity, and then the gozas or the fruit tarts are going to be the most acidic, and then there's beers in between, so that people can kind of step into that if they're not accustomed to it. Even though some people, they jump right into the heavily fruited stuff.
Yeah.
Even though it's the most acidic, and that's what they pick up on.
Yeah, well, people like those fruity beers. They like drinking
I was
stuff.
I did the tour of New Belgium
Okay.
in Colorado.
Nice.
I thought you were going to say Belgium for a minute.
In Belgium,
Yeah.
in Fort
Wrong
Collins.
brewery.
And when they took us on the tour we went to the barrel, and they sour. They have the barrel aged in the sour area of the brewery of the house, and they were pouring us some stuff to taste, and the tour guide said he goes, with any beer in particular, but he goes both sours more so, it's the 3-sip test, and it's like you hit the sip once, and it's like it hits your system, and you're like, oh, I don't know what like it's tart, that's different. You hit it again, and it dulls the flavor. Your kind of tongue gets used to it, and this third sip is whether you tell you if you can like it or not.
Yeah.
If you're going to actually enjoy the beer. Now, is that just something the guy came up with it, or came up with it cool in the, or is that, do you think it's legitimate?
Oh, no, it's definitely legitimate. I was going to say it's like Simpsons did it, in the sense that we thought of that too independently, but obviously we're not the only ones, and it's foolish to think that we would have been the only ones.
Yeah.
But we used to have to use that with customers all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nowadays, some people, they're not as educated or crafty. Then you might use that terminology. But the way sour beer and tart beers have progressed in the market, most people have a bit of an expectation, and they'll give it a chance instead of taking that one sip and doing a spit take, or just saying, oh, I don't like this, and giving it back to you or dumping it out. So no, it's totally legitimate.
Yeah, and to that point, the reason I was shaking my head as DJ was asking that question is I've been to several different distillery tours, and typically you hear it when it comes to whiskey. That's a very common thing to do, because the first hit of whiskey you're going to have is going to have probably a burning sensation, and then you're going to get that next little bit of flavor, and then finally on that last sip you're going to get that smoothness. So I think it's just anything you're tasting.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing to do when you're trying something new.
Yeah, when you have real intense flavors or sensations, something like that, for sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Like somebody had once referred to a sour beer as a complex beer, because it's a layer of flavors. You got the tartness, and you like with this beer here, the pale. You got the traditional pale flavor. You got the tart flavor. It's flavor layered on top of flavor.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of takes the brain a minute to catch up with what you're actually processing and drinking.
And while we're talking about it too, I learned a while back, when you smell with your mouth open, because your tongue actually has, your tongue does a lot to taste while you smell, and it actually does allow for better airflow and stuff. So next time you're smelling a new beer, open up your mouth. Anything, whiskey, beer, it makes a huge difference in what you're able to tell, especially for someone like me who always thought I had a bad sense of smell, and then I did it, and I was like, oh gosh, I did not know this.
So this was the Pale's one of your flagships. What's some of the other your flagships?
The Postcard, the Sour IPA, and then the rotated Fruited Goza line. So between key limes, tart cherries, chocolate raspberry, which we actually have a keg held on to that's on tap tonight, and then kumquats, which are basically like a tiny baby orange that doesn't have any pith. So it's the only citrus fruit that you actually eat the rind on. It's a beautiful fruit. If you ever see kumquats, I highly, highly recommend them.
I've heard the word and always thought it was funny, but
yeah, we get that. I've actually had one or two accounts refuse to buy it because of that word, but I think it intrigues enough people that it's worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's really funny. Well, very cool, DJ. Any last thoughts?
No, man. I mean, it's been nice to catch up with Urban Artifact and just learn about the brewery, and excited for the stuff coming downtown or coming in town. And excited to come up and visit one day.
Yeah. One other question to that point. What is at the brewery right now that we couldn't get here in Knoxville? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so we did send the keg a gyroscope, the raspberry Midwest fruit tart, but we still have cans of that, which didn't make it to Knoxville. And then Love Letter is a peach version. So it's probably the last one that won't make it here for a little while, just given our scale up. But that just released yesterday. And it'll be there for roughly 4 weeks, depending on how excited people get.
Okay, so with our current pace of releasing, you should be able to get it if you're listening to this on your way to Cincinnati.
Actually, we've been doing good.
We've been doing a lot better.
Yeah, a lot better.
yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
So I guess
Got one last question, right?
Wrap it up.
Yeah.
What's in your beer fridge?
What's in my beer fridge?
Yeah.
Man, I love smoked beers. Okay, and to me, it's an underappreciated style, just mostly because it gets.
You should. Oh, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The smoked saison, I believe, from Hexagon at the Brewfest.
Oh, okay.
Try at the Brewfest. Try that. Try the smoked saison.
I'll be looking for that. Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, Mac's gonna kill me. Is it smoked Kolsch?
Whatever.
Oh my gosh!
Look it up.
TJ's
While
gonna
you
look
Smoked
look
beer
that
from
up.
Saison from Hexagon.
Hexagon.
Mac's gonna kill me.
Yeah,
It's okay.
Yeah, so Schrenkerlaw, the German brewery, they do the smoked Maibach, but they also do a Helles. And the Helles doesn't have an actually smoked malt in it, but they don't clean their equipment. Like, they don't clean the mill out between beers. So it's actually really lightly smoked. You get that like smell on the nose of kind of like bacony, but otherwise it's a really clean, easy drinking Helles lager with just that little bit of smokiness. I love weird, funky beers. So like if I could find the Leipziger, that's like the sour, smoky, salty goza. Anyway,
Sounds delicious.
yeah, just give me the weirdest stuff. That's what you're gonna find in my beer fridge.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, Scotty, thank you so much for joining
I
us.
appreciate the time today, guys.
Yeah, and I guess last question. Where can people find you online? Where can people find Urban Artifact throughout the United States, for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, online is Artifact Beer. And then as far as distribution right now, it's primarily just Ohio, Knoxville, a little bit in northern Kentucky. We're going to work on servicing those markets before we expand outside of that. But we attend some beer festivals around the country as well, too. And we occasionally sell some beer through Tavour, not trying to give a plug necessarily, but it is a nice way to buy some beer online that you can't normally get in your markets.
That's cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. And with that said, this has been Chris Hill.
This is DJ Loop,
And remember to stay humble.
and try new beer.
Halfway down in the bottom of a bottle, and I ain't gonna change my